I want residuals.
Whip Ass Wednesday here in the Freak Nation, and as promised, Josh Weinfuss joins us here in the Freak Nation. Josh, you whipping some ass today, buddy?
I'm trying. I'm dragging ass is what I'm doing.
Postseason blues.
It was an early morning Tuesday. It was a late night Monday night,
Right.
And then early morning had like a 6 a.m. flight out of LA back to Phoenix. So it's been a rough couple of days.
First world problems for Josh Weinfuss, Freak Nation.
Yeah, very first world problems.
Right. Cardinals insider Josh Weinfuss joining us here in the Freak Nation, and knowing that this is an international extravaganza with the Freak Nation, we still localize quite a bit, and still some talk going on with the Cardinals. And so many Monday morning quarterbacks out there, and Richie's one of them. I'm one of them. Crash.
Yes,
and I don't necessarily want to go there as far as what we said. Yeah, we told you this is going to happen. But Josh Weinfuss, now that you've had a chance to somewhat sleep on it, have you been able to deduce what the hell happened outside of the obvious? Is there anything in particular that happened Monday night against the Rams that maybe we aren't privy to such a decimation of a team that at one time was headed for the Super Bowl?
No.
Mm-hmm.
No, they got punched in the face very hard, very early in that game, and they couldn't get off the mat. And the Rams just kept knocking them. Anytime they picked their head up, they knocked them back down. I mean, it was an absolute bloodbath, and there's nothing behind the scenes to it. I mean, they got, for the lack of a better term, they got their asses kicked. And I mean, and I don't say that lightly. Like it was ugly all around, and the Cardinals couldn't find offensive rhythm. They couldn't stop the running game on defense. I mean, everything that we've seen over the last 10 games kept, continued in the worst possible time. Now, I'll be honest. I honestly thought that was not going to happen. I thought that this was the game that the Cardinals were going to go back to their old ways. I thought this was a game that they had got everyone healthy back for, everyone was healthy for, that they were planning on. I mean, they had basically planned Chase Edmonds' return for this game. I just thought it was one game, everything would come together. That wasn't the case. The Rams came out there, punched them straight in the teeth, and they did not let up after that.
And of course, people want to point fingers as to whose fault it was. I mean, there's a lot of blame that can go around, but of course, Kliff Kingsbury is taking the biggest, I guess, point, or people are going in his direction more often than not. Your thoughts on what the team may do, should do with the coaching position, the head coaching position?
I think they're not going to do anything. There is a small part of me, like a very small part of me, that says they might move on, because I do know that there are some options out there that the team has liked in the past. But I don't think anything will happen. I mean, you have to give him some credit, right? That he inherited a 3-win team. He got them to 5 wins, got them to 8 wins, got to 11 wins, and got them to the playoffs. But like I wrote yesterday, are we seeing Kliff Kingsbury hitting his ceiling as an NFL head coach? Because he's taken them so far, but he can't get them over that hump. And we're seeing these late season collapses. I mean, it's happened in all 9 years he's been a head coach, going back to Texas Tech. At some point, as an organization, you're going to have to sit there and say, when does that change? And how many more years are we going to give him the opportunity to change that? And if it doesn't change, like, what if they go 2 more years and it's the same stuff? They're going to be kicking themselves for not parting ways with him now and find someone who can get them to that next level. I compare it a lot to what happened with the Chicago Bulls in the late 80s. You had Doug Collins coaching them, and in '89 he gets them to the NBA or Eastern Conference Finals. They can't beat the Pistons. They fire him, bring in a guy named Phil Jackson, and the rest is history. Like, maybe that's what this team needs. Maybe Kliff Kingsbury has taken them as far as he can. I don't know.
Who are the other options out there, and how would they? And let's just play, whatever scenario we want to play right now. How would they mesh with this team? What would make them better?
I think, let's say, for the sake of hypotheticals, they do fire Kliff Kingsbury this week. I think their first call is to Brian Flores. And I think the thing with Flores is, I'm sure he's learned a lot about how to deal with management in Miami, but he's going to have to come with incredible offensive coordinator who can get the most out of Kyler Murray. He can handle the defense. He can be that CEO that they need, but in order for him to get, the job, I think, in my opinion, would be all but his. He would need to come with an offensive coordinator that can take Kyler Murray from, who he is now, a Pro Bowler, potential MVP candidate, to an MVP guy who can take a team to a deep playoff run.
Let's go extremely wicked. Why not Brian Flores and keep Kingsbury on as offensive coordinator? I know that would be embarrassing, but at the same time, it's his strength.
It is. It wouldn't put it past me to see that option on the table, from the Cardinals standpoint. I think that would be something they would think about. But if I'm Kliff Kingsbury, I don't take a demotion, right? I mean, I don't think anybody would take that demotion,
right?
And that's exactly what it is. You're telling him you're not good enough to be an NFL head coach, but you're good enough to be an NFL offensive coordinator, and that's not happening at the same place. He will go somewhere else and be an offensive coordinator before he takes a demotion with the Cardinals.
Josh Weinfuss joining us here in the Freak Nation. Suave, go right ahead, bud.
Yeah, thank you. So Kyler Murray, that's the next step here. Dude looks scared on Monday. Did he not? He did not look like he was ready for the occasion whatsoever. My favorite of that being a very similar play to what we saw several weeks ago in the end zone, where he was like, I don't know what to do here, so I'm taking a sack, and he throws the pick six. That's the ball game right there. So what does Kyler Murray have to do to figure out how to be a leader of this football team? Because right now he's not doing it.
That's a good question. I think we need to see him be more demonstrative on the field, right? He needs to start being that leader from a body language standpoint, a verbal standpoint on the field. I think he's doing some of it off the field, but that needs to start translating onto the field. I always compare him in my head to Carson Palmer. Granted, they were very different stages of their career, but Carson, he led, right? He was that leader on the field, and we're not seeing that yet from Kyler Murray. Did he play scared? I don't know if he necessarily played scared. I think he was running for his life the whole game, and that changed the whole complexion. And that's an offensive line thing. That's a blocking thing, right? You know who's on this Rams front seven. You need to go above and beyond what you would normally do to make sure Aaron Donald's blocked every single play and Von Miller's blocked every single play. When they're getting by Max Garcia and Kelvin Beachum on a regular basis and DJ Humphries, Kyler doesn't have time to do anything. All of a sudden, he's scrambling. That obviously was an ill-advised underhand throw. He said after the game, he was looking back on it, he would rather have taken the sack, but he doesn't know it's going to get. He's going to be pick six, right? So he was trying to get the ball out of the end zone. But I just think they didn't look prepared. All week we heard, how are you not ready for the playoffs? Of course we're going to be ready for the playoffs. They weren't ready for the playoffs. It's mind-blowing when you think about it. They look as ill-prepared as you could possibly be for the biggest games of Kyler's career so far, of Kliff's career so far, of all 31 players who had made the playoffs career so far. It was shocking to me at how just there was no energy. There was no sense of urgency. There was just, they were not ready. And Kyler might have been overwhelmed by the moment. This team doesn't perform well on prime time. But beyond that, to me, the biggest question is why weren't you ready? Why wasn't this team as prepared as it can be? And that doesn't matter who is responsible. The buck stops at the head coach. And I think questions, Kliff did a better job of answering some of those questions, but we may never know why this team wasn't completely prepared like they should have been for a playoff game.
Josh, we've talked plenty about the offense, and we still have a lot of questions about that. It's out there. I'm not a fan of the ownership. Ownership's going nowhere. I'm not a fan of Steve Keim, what he's done, the whole Kliff Kingsbury. The two issues that I heard from my Big 12 friends were one, he never could finish a game. And two, you look at the Big 12 games. The Big 12 games were stacked at the tail end. That's just what happens in Big 12 football. You play the tougher games at the tail end of the season. So I don't need to run through that too much. But look at the defense. Remember kicking off the season how we were talking about Jordan Hicks going to another team? Isaiah Simmons, he is not an inside linebacker. I'm sorry. Zaven Collins, I know he's a rookie, but look at these last two draft picks for the Cardinals. They were freaking no-shows, my friend. What the hell do we do about that?
You're not wrong, Kenny. Where were they on Monday night? You had David Collins splitting time, with a guy who was a backup. I mean, career backup in Tanner Vallejo. I mean, he's a great special teamer, but I mean, it's not a knock on him. He's just a backup. And then you had Isaiah Simmons not really playing all that well. It's just you put all that draft capital into two back-to-back inside linebackers, which is kind of mind-blowing to begin with, and yet you still have Jordan Hicks as your primary starting inside linebacker. It shows so much more about Jordan Hicks. I mean, this guy took all this, I don't want to say pressure, but all this.
It was heat, Josh. It was heat.
It was heat.
It was.
You know what? Screw it. I'm going to make the most out of this. And he did. Right? I mean, that dude deserves all the credit in the world for what he went through and then how he came out of it. But I mean, if we're going to sit and really break this down, I mean, obviously you got to look at Steve Keim's history of first-round picks. This happened again, right? I mean, you had David Collins, who's supposed to be the end-all, be-all inside linebacker. This kid's so smart. This kid's so talented. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe going to Toledo didn't prepare him for the NFL. Just like we saw going to UMass didn't prepare Andy Isabella for the NFL. So maybe there is some sort of correlation between, these guys who aren't playing big-time college football not being overly prepared for the NFL. The flip side of that is we see it happen all the time. We see it happen around the league where guys go to smaller schools and play well. So maybe it's something the Cardinals are doing. Maybe they're not preparing them enough during training camp and rookie mini camp and OTAs and other mini camps. Like maybe they're not doing their part to get them ready for the NFL. I don't know, but to put that much draft capital into two inside linebackers and have the incumbent starter start all season is kind of like, what are you doing? Like that could have been the difference between getting a receiver or a running back or an offensive lineman that could have got them to the second round of the playoffs.
Well, whether it's not preparing them appropriately or not vetting them appropriately enough before the draft, again, what we just talked about falls back on Steve Keim. But again, he's not going anywhere. So how can fans feel confident moving forward? I mean, it's such a gut punch what happened on Monday. And then it's like, oh, but at least we have the draft. Oh, crap. Keim's in charge.
I think the only this is kind of messed up, but like, does this team just continually add 1 or 2 or 3 more wins every year until they're 17-0 in like 4 or 5 years?
Still go out in the first round.
Right? It's great still go in the first round. Like, but it's like you see this progress. But if I'm a fan, I'm like, sure, they're winning more and they have a great first half of the season, but I want them to go 4-5 in the first 9 games, and then I want them to finish 8-0. Like,
and learn what those 5 losses were, or how did those happen? Yeah. I
mean, the narrative around Kliff Kingsbury would be totally different if he struggled early and won late. But, and people are trying to tell me, like, I had some guy on Twitter, like, oh, they finished 11-5. That was a great season. I'm like, it doesn't matter what their record was. It's how you finish. It's not how you start.
You remember Bruce Arians' first year? What happened with Bruce Arians?
They went 4-4.
Yeah. And then missed the playoffs, at 10-6 or something, right?
Yeah. And then he came back in 11. And they went, were they 7-0 or 9-0 to start the 14th season?
Yeah.
And then they ended up 11-5, 16 games. Yeah, 16 games. Yeah. And then they went 13-3 the next year. I mean, you want to see that improvement, but you also need to see teams get better and stronger as seasons go on. And Kliff Kingsbury's teams just don't, right? And then, but here's the thing: his history isn't just, steeped in not finishing season strong. It's steeped in having penalty riddled teams. He was among the top. Texas Tech was among the most penalized teams in the country, not just the Big 12, the country under Kliff Kingsbury. So if we take a step back and we look at this from a 35,000-foot view, the answer is Kliff Kingsbury's teams are not very disciplined. That's what it comes down to. And that's penalties. That's and that's kind of where the second half issues have really come from. A lot of self inflicted mistakes, and that comes from self-discipline. They don't have it. They just don't have this the type of discipline that great teams, that championship teams have.
But see, there's where I just have this weird way of thinking about things, because it's like, I know Chandler Jones is disciplined. I know JJ Watt has self-discipline.
Individually they are, but as a team, they're not.
I don't understand how these big boys who know how to play the game, who know what makes a penalty, how all together they can suddenly, because of a certain coaching scheme, just go to crap.
I don't necessarily think it's a coaching scheme. I think it's probably all the other things. It's maybe they don't spend as much time working on something, or they, someone on Twitter brought up yesterday. It was actually kind of a good point. They were like, he eases up his practices as the season goes on to save their legs. So maybe that's something, right? Like, it's not necessarily the X's and O's. It's kind of everything that goes with it, goes around that isn't consistent, or just isn't up to par throughout the whole year.
Josh Weinfuss here in the Freak Nation, and it's got to be frustrating for a lot of Cardinals fans out there. But then again, the Kool-Aid never seems to run out. Nothing's shown me that there's going to be anything different than this time next year. Nothing's changed. Nothing's freaking changed. So the frustration is up at a level that, again, I don't understand why the blowback hasn't forced somebody to make a change, buddy.
Here's what could change.
Okay.
If they have this team, or a team similar to this, they have a healthy DeAndre Hopkins, I think that changes things. I think losing him was such a major blow to this offense, because let's get into the X's and O's for a second. He's your isolated receiver on one side of Kyler Murray, with three guys on the other side, right? The defense would have to go and figure out what they're going to do with this guy, leaving these three guys single covered. Well, you take him out of the equation and you put in some other guy here. Well, they don't need to worry about a DeAndre Hopkins. They have to worry about whoever, right? What was his name? Antoine Wesley, right? He doesn't scare defensive coordinators like DeAndre Hopkins does. And that changed everything, right? Everything. Because now you have AJ Green double covered. You have, teams rolling all their coverages to the other side, and that just Kliff did not adapt. He didn't adapt last year when teams figured out what he was doing, and he didn't adapt this year. That falls on him. That doesn't fall on him. What Kyler can do, he can change the play line of scrimmage all he wants. But if a defense knows that these are the two or three guys you're going to every single play, it does make it hard for any quarterback to get plays, to make plays. It really does.
Well, you look at the wide receivers that were drafted ahead of your buddy Zaven Collins. Maybe they could have helped out a little bit, but
let's go back. You take Andy Isabella ahead of DK Metcalf.
Still my favorite moment in Cardinals history. Yeah. I think me, Kenny, and Crash will never forget where we were when that happened.
I mean, imagine how good this offense would be if you had DeAndre, AJ Green, Christian Kirk, and DK Metcalf.
But if they had DK, I don't think they would have gone after DeAndre.
Oh, 100% they would have.
Yeah.
Because Bill O'Brien was dumb enough to still make that trade.
Exactly.
Give away David Johnson and get DeAndre Hopkins. I don't care who is on your team. You do that trade.
No.
This is wild to me that Kliff can only be successful. And I don't think I'm out of line saying this based on how this team performed. If all the guys are healthy. It's the NFL. Like, that's not gonna happen. So if you take one of those guys out of the equation, your team's not going to be successful long term.
Right.
That doesn't add up to me.
Listen, Cardinals losses, a lot of teams wins, and I'll say the 2020 draft, CeeDee Lamb sitting there. Oh, Dallas, you didn't need that cornerback after all. Oh, but Isaiah Simmons went to the Cardinals, 7 or 8 picks earlier?
Hey, how are those Cowboys doing right now?
They can suck it.
But here's the thing. Like, Kyler explicitly asked for CeeDee
Lamb.
Yeah. And these quarterbacks, they know.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they need. They know who they need. They know why they need them. Teams need to start listening to these guys more.
Hey, Josh, between you and me.
And everybody listening.
Yeah. Kenny, you Cowboys homer, you Texas Longhorns homer. Jerry Jones stinks as an owner too.
Yeah.
Sarkisian blows. Just be. These people that act like there's nothing wrong with the Cardinals, there's a crap ton wrong with the Cardinals.
But they want to come at you.
Yeah, well, can you use Cowboys
takes and
What do you expect?
Yeah.
What do you expect?
I would pay the bus fare for Mike McCarthy to head to Arizona. Are you kidding me? I'm not saying.
It would be interesting to see an experienced coach who has, how do I say this? An experienced coach with quarterbacks, I guess, if that even makes sense. Work with Kyler.
Yeah.
Whether it's, Mike McCarthy could be interesting. I think, I cannot think this morning. Former Lions coach who got fired before Patricia.
Oh, geez. Now we're going back a couple of layers there.
What's his name?
Yeah, him.
Weinfuss. No, I'm joking.
Get out of here. You're so old. Why can't I think of his name? But the coach that Matt Patricia, that the Lions fired, he'd be great. Great to work with Kyler. Does he want to come back and offensive coordinator? I don't know. But if you hire, let's say you were to part ways, hypothetically speaking, so you fire Kliff, and then you bring in Brian Flores as your head coach, and then why can't I think of his name? He worked in Indy too.
Worked for the Colts. What's his name?
Worked for the Colts.
Yeah.
Jim Caldwell.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim Caldwell.
Oh.
Jim Caldwell. I think he would be a great addition to the staff if they were to move on from Kliff.
Steve Sarkisian. I'll pay that bus fare.
Stop it. I think
Kenny.
Arizona is done with Big 12 right now.
Chip Kelly.
I just love that stat.
Here's a funny Chip Kelly story. I was in Manhattan Beach on Sunday night, and I'm walking down the street to a bar, and there's Chip Kelly just chilling, walking down the street. And we're just like, I was with a coworker, and we're just kind of like, that guy looked really familiar. And like, that's Chip Kelly. It was Chip Kelly just hanging out.
Were you at Sharky's?
No, we went to some brewery.
I saw the Cardinals fan group was heading to Sharky's on Sunday night. So that's what I was wondering.
Not there.
Good. Okay.
Again, one of my favorite stats is Kliff Kingsbury's record with Patrick Mahomes.
But here's the thing: like everyone loves to give it. I will defend Kliff in this standpoint. You're at Texas Tech. You are getting 2- and 3-star athletes because look who else in that state. Look who else in that region. Like you're getting the leftovers at Texas Tech. And he hated recruiting, and their defenses were terrible. Like you could have put Joe Montana in the '80s out there, and you weren't going to win a Big 12 title. Let's be real. Joe Montana. That was the first thing that came into my head. That's terrible.
Weinfuss.
That's terrible.
Right. Well, I feel for cats like yourself, man. And a good buddy of mine, Gavin Spittle, who's the program director with 105.3 The Fan in Dallas, the home of the Dallas Cowboys. You want to cover a team that just goes deep and gives you a chance to provide some legs for your commentary. And damn it, Josh. Sorry, buddy.
Here's the flip side.
Uh-oh.
I'm going on paternity leave pretty soon, so I'm okay with personally. I was fine with the run. We all had all my plans for the Super Bowl ready because I really thought this team was going to go, but there's always the other side, and that is I get to spend more time with my infant son, so we're good with that.
Yeah.
So you could take maternity leave after the child was born.
You have 1 year from the day they're born to take it.
Badass.
Yeah.
Well, if you think about it,
your dad's not taking it before, Kenny.
Yeah, no.
That'd be weird. I'm not gonna sit at home and do nothing.
Yeah, I'm getting geeked up for the birth of my child for 6 weeks.
I'd golf every day for 8 weeks if that was the case.
Right.
Honey, hope you're feeling well.
Yeah. What do you need next? Need more ice cream? Like more Oreos, more pickles? Like, what are you gonna do for 8 weeks before the kid's born, Kenny?
Josh, as always, buddy, appreciate your time. Thank you, man.
I always enjoy it.
All right, see you, bud.
See ya.
He says reluctantly. He says reluctantly.
All right, Freak Nation, thanks for being a part of this big old whip ass Wednesday. Later.
I want residuals.
All right, I'll meet you at the other link.
All right.
Okay, should we change shirts?
No.
No.